Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second part of our Nurture and Grow Parenting Workshop. My name is Dr. Kelly Davis Martin, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all as I kind of build on some of the concepts we talked about last week. I want to just take a few minutes and introduce what those concepts were, and kind of where we are today, where we're going to head, and then take a moment to further introduce myself before jumping into our content. So I know this is a really wordy slide, but kind of the intention of this workshop is to help families think about how we can improve behavior in our children and create a more connected, nurturing, and resilient family unit. Last week, we talked about the idea of connection before correction, and just a brief summary of that, essentially around how we want at the base of our pyramid of how we spend our time and what we think about to be around connecting with our kiddos, around quality time, child-directed play, etc. And then that we want some of those least or less used commands, or less used skills, excuse me, to be around commands and discipline. Today, we're going to build on this and be talking a little bit more about behaviors. In particular, I'm going to be planting the seeds around habits and how we can create habits as families that might facilitate, again, more resilient, healthier families. And then finally, our last week together, we'll be talking around nurturing the parent. And this theme came up last week and it will come up again today because it's so core. If we're looking at having successful family units, our caregivers really need to be able to take care of themselves because everything else can be really difficult if the parent isn't regulated or isn't getting their own needs met. So I just kind of the plan for today will probably be a bit shorter than an hour, but I wanted to make sure that we record this for those of you who can't attend, and just to pace for those of you who want to know how long the recording will be. Again, introduction. My name is Dr. Kelly Davis Martin. I'm the principal family therapist at Growth Rings Family Therapy. I see patients via telehealth, but also I have offices in both Sisters and Bend, Oregon. I primarily do work with families and youth. I specialize in parent-child interaction therapy, which you'll hear some of those themes come out today. I'm really passionate and interested in around using literacy and nature as ways to connect to our kiddos. And I'll share towards the end of today's talk about a couple of upcoming workshops that I'm leading and created and leading around those topics as well. My doctorate degree is in behavioral health, and I have been a licensed professional counselor as well. End of a long day. Sorry, I'm tongue-tied a little today. All right, so kind of two parts today. The first is I want to talk about understanding habits. And then the second thing that I want to be addressing and talking more about is around what are some examples of habits and healthy behaviors that we might be able to facilitate for our kiddos. So let's first talk a little bit about this idea of habits and why they matter. When we think about habits, these can be determined partially by what our family values are and what norms we subscribe to. Part of that can influence how we spend our time and what those values look like. We also don't want to discount the fact that oftentimes there are many cultural influences around not only our core family unit, but our community. And that can be our geographical community, but also religious community, ethnic communities, racial communities. We can be influenced by larger social norms, including socioeconomic status and societal pressures, institutions, workplaces, media, etc. And we also want to talk today mostly about what our family norms are and how that might impact the individual behaviors and our family unit behaviors, both on what we do, our behaviors, but also how we think and what we're feeling. So the I want to focus a little bit on habits and really just I'm going to oversimplify this, partly because I want to just paint a rough draft picture so that we can all be on the same page. But there's some great science behind habits and what habits are. So, one of the examples that I love to use when we're thinking about habits is this idea of how our brains work when it comes to habits. Habits are really important. If we had to think about every detail every day about everything we did, our brains would be overwhelmed and overstimulated. But our brain, this amazing organ that it is, actually will create different, what I'm going to call kind of superhighway or pathways in our minds that allow us to do things almost on autopilot. And some of those things are so automatic and such strong habits that they would actually be hard to break. It kind of gets created like this. Think about if a helicopter were to drop you off on the top of a mountain and say, they drop you off and they're like, find your way home, right? Off you go, ta-ta. Um, we'd often figure it out, right? We might, as we navigate through the woods and the forest, might feel like we're bushwhacking a little bit. We might have to navigate through a cliff or swim across a river. But once we get home, we know that we can do it. If the helicopter dropped us off the same mountain and said, find your way home again, we would likely go a very similar path because we know that gets us home. If there was something particularly dangerous, they were like, oh, if I go a quarter of a mile further south and then cut across the river, it's much more shallow. So I'm going to do it that way this time. But if that helicopter keeps dropping us off at the top of the mountain and we keep having to find our way home, what was a bushwhacked trail, we are likely to keep using that trail over and over. And it eventually kind of wears into more of like an animal trail, single track. Then maybe it's more like a dirt road because we're using it so much. Maybe because we use it so much, it eventually becomes like a paved road, a paved 2-lane road, a highway, and then like a super highway or an interstate. That's what happens in our brain. When we're tasked with doing something or something new, we kind of are like creating a pathway. And it's a really rough draft. Even if it's not the best, most efficient, or safest pathway, our brain creates it that way. And then because we know we can get from here to there with this pathway, we will likely keep using that pathway. Maybe some initial modifications to make it easier or safer, but we often will use that pathway again and again. And like I said, it just gets worn and it becomes goes from a single track to a dirt road to a paved road to a highway to a super highway. And we just easy as. If someone dropped us off on that helicopter on the top of the mountain and said, now, here's the way to actually get home that's the safest or the fastest, you actually need to go that direction. And it's different from what you've done, but it will get you there. If that happens and we try to do that now, it will be really hard for our brain because now we are bushwhacking through the forest again. Eventually, if we kept doing it, we would start all over with a single track trail, da 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 da, until it became eventually maybe a highway or superhighway. But it would be really hard for our brains to do that, to create a new habit. So when we talk about habits individuals and as family units and habits in how we think, habits in how we feel, habits in what we do, this isn't as easy as, oh, well, you value this, so go the safe route, go the easy route, go the time efficient route. That seems easy enough. It's not quite that simple. So tonight, as we talk through this, yes, I want to get to some real practical, like what are some of the habits that I would recommend for families, especially what I see in my practice and what I read about in research. I want to share some of my top habits that I would encourage people to think about. I'll try to just do a bit of a broad additional list to some of those habits, but honor that these are not necessarily easy to create new neural pathways of thinking, of feeling, and of doing in our lives. So, when I use that term habit, I'm naming this kind of then this comes from the Webster Dictionary, right? It's a tendency or practice to do something over and over again, and it can be hard to change. So the helicopter drops you off, you go your way, even if it's longer, even if it's harder, even if it's more dangerous, because that's the way you know. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes in your brain because that is what is getting created. So as we're the responsibility of families and parenting comes in, we have to be really mindful that the habits we've created in our lives, all right, over and over again, even if it's not the safest, the easiest, or the most efficient, we may be bringing those habits in to our children in their new brains, their new ways of thinking and feeling and doing. And role modeling or teaching them those habits, even if there was a different or better way for them to go, even if the safer, more efficient way to go would be a different direction. So, as parents, there's oftentimes a lot of work we need to be doing to help our children create a new superhighway, to create a superhighway that is going to be more beneficial for them in the long run. Okay. So, when we think about some of our habits, I encourage you to just take a moment and consider what are some of your personal habits, even little things that we might not be aware of. Like if you were to sit down and take your shoes off, which shoe would you take off first? Or which shoe do you put on first in the morning? Which arm do you put in first when you're getting dressed in your shirts? How do you brush your teeth? Right? If we had to consider every detail like that each time we're sitting there deciding if we're going to take off our shoes, and then which shoe do I take off first? Again, my brain would get overwhelmed with the amount of decisions that I have that I need to make in a day, and it would be really difficult to function. So, habits do play an important role. Some of these habits are things that we bring more conscious attention to. We hear a lot about these kinds of habits in pop culture around things like nutrition, physical activity, screen time. We'll talk about some of those tonight too. When we look at then habits of a family, think about this family as that unit, and it can mean many things to people, but as I'm talking today, I want to ensure that this isn't just for parents. We're talking about immediate household, yes, that can include parents for sure, or other caregivers, but it can also include extended family units that may be family and or friends and kind of this kinship connections that we have. And another way that we could look at this, another layer, is even descendants of a common ancestor. The reason I want to give these different layers, kind of like layers of a rock, right? There's the deeper layers and the more current, what we see layers, is because habits can be transferred from different generations to generations. And sometimes we are doing things in our family units, our immediate family units, that we might not even understand why we're doing them. Like, why do I put that in the dishwasher first? Or why do I, these are both domestic chore examples, but why do I do the laundry or fold the towels the way I fold the towels? And these habits aren't necessarily going to make or break the development of our child, but it's worth examining them. And we have to bring some conscious thought to the ways we think, feel, and do so that we can examine how that shows up within our family units. So I'd like you to take a moment and just consider, and if you have a way to write it down, that's great. Consider what are some habits that your family has. And that could be, again, your immediate family that you live with in your household, extended family and friend network, your kind of kinship connections, I'll call it, and or kind of your ancestry, what's going on as far as people in your life. What are some of those family habits? And yes, they may include traditions. We're kind of in a holiday season here. I love some of our family traditions of Christmas tree hunting or a gift exchange. I love those. But the habits might include things like how we prepare food or what we choose to eat. How do we show love? How do we communicate? Right? So think for yourself some of those habits. Okay. So as we talk today, we understand a little bit about the neuroscience, right? How the brain creates these kind of super highways with the more we do something, whether it's the way we think, feel, or what we do. It's creating super highways. Now, if I want to create a new one, I'm getting dropped off and I need to go the different direction to get home. It's safer, it's faster, it's more efficient. How? How do I do that? And there's a great book called The Happiness Hypothesis. And the author in this I love this imagery and I wanted to share it with you. He talks about kind of three entities that need to be addressed when we're trying to create new habits. And he uses an elephant, a rider, and the forest as, or in this case, the jungle as the analogy. So he talks about kind of the elephant is like the emotional brain. If we're trying to make a change, the elephant isn't something that is easily controlled. Our emotions are not easily controlled, right? They take some coaxing, it takes some time. This little rider on top of the element, that's like our rational brain. It's the cognitive thinking part of our mind. And we might want to do something like, I want to drink more water or reduce the amount of social media time I spend, or talk more calmly to my children. I want to do that, but when the back part or my emotional response of my brain has a different reaction to that, it can be really hard. It's like this little tiny rider, the thinking part, trying to control this huge beast of emotions. One thing that can make those two entities work better together and be more likely to go in the direction I want is if the pathway to making those choices is more clear. If we've created an environment that makes it easier to go that direction. So, for example, if I want to drink more water, things that I could set up in my environment might be having more water around, filled water bottle in my car, water filter in my fridge, water bottle at work. For my kiddos, it might be packing a water bottle in a way they like it. Maybe they like a dash of flavoring, or they need it really cold with icicles or um, ice cubes, whatever that looks like for them. So, creating the environment, this physical environment that makes it easier to wrangle our emotional elephant of a brain um, with our thinking part, the little rider, to move forward to do what we want. And this is a great thing to think about for ourselves as the adults in the household, but also for our children. And when we are concerned about, oftentimes parents come to me with concerns about their children's behavior, challenging behavior, right? That's the elephant. That is the elephant in the room, as they would say. But the elephant is big, these emotions, especially for kids, that their cognitive rider might not be as strong yet to manage this huge elephant. So, one thing that we can do for our children to help them manage those emotions or create new pathways in their brain or new behaviors, new ways of thinking, feeling, or doing is to clear this environmental pathway for them. What can we do as an adult to make it easier for them to move in the direction of those healthy habits, whether it's emotional regulation, drinking water, reducing screen time, getting better sleep, engaging in self-care habits, reading their book every night, whatever it is that we're trying to do. So, creating that environment involves a lot of different things. Yes, pack the water bottle, of course, but also, this is sometimes the hard part, we need to do it. We, the parents, need to be role modeling. So, as we go through this evening, and I'm going to share kind of my top four favorite things that I would encourage people to think about for habits. Um, Not an exhaustive list, but just to get us started and to be time sensitive. And think about how you're actually doing with those and how they're linked to the behaviors we're seeing in our kiddos. So, I'd like you to take a moment right now. We talked a little bit about what family habits we might have, kind of thinking of immediate family, extended family, or even more of an ancestral kind of family. But what I'd like you to do now is not what habits you have, but take a moment and consider what you would like to be doing regularly. What do you wish your brain was like? Here, this is my thing. I do this. It's easy. I don't have to give it a lot of thought. It's a healthy, hopefully, a healthy habit that we all engage in. What would you like that to be? Take a minute and reflect on that. Okay. So I want to share a couple of habits, um, like I said, and just plant these seeds tonight. I hesitate at times to share this with families, partly because I don't want this to feel like I'm judging, right? That here's what you need to be doing, and if you're not, somehow you're not a good enough parent or you're not doing what you need to do. I just don't subscribe to that. Um, First of all, I'm a parent, and anybody who knows me, and especially those who know me well, like my own children, would say I'm not a perfect parent. I don't think there is such a thing. And nor should we put so much pressure on ourselves to be a perfect parent. I think there's a lot of cultural pressures already on parents, and there's this expectation and judgment from society or other parents that we're just not doing it right. And it begins as early as pregnancy. And for a lot of women, their birth stories or whether they breastfeed or not, I mean, it begins early. So, what I'd love to think of this is more about sharing ideas and a sense of community that we can co create. Hence, these workshops. I want people to feel like you're getting the support of your peers and more information, yes, but also to feel that these challenges are very normal and there perhaps are tangible things that we might be able to work on. My expectation isn't that you would do all of these things at once, right? That would be a lot of bushwhacking and new neural pathways to be creating at a given time. So keep checking in with like what resonates for you, what feels like it fits with your family values the most, what feels like it's something tangible that you could actually implement. Some of these things you may be doing or doing a version of them, and it might be easy to just flip change and get it done. Some of them might feel harder and really looking at things like, I'll give an example. We'll talk today a fair amount about screen times. And one of my recommendations is not to have screens in bedrooms, just no TVs, and ideally, especially for kids, no phones. That can be hard for people. There's a lot of people who not only have screens in their bedrooms, but they are used to, from their own childhood, having screens on in the background as kind of background noise or in their bedroom and falling asleep with screens on. And challenging that habit, changing that habit might feel too big right now. So enter into this conversation instead of thinking like, I'm not good enough, I need to do more, and that this is a deficit conversation. Instead, enter into this conversation as this is information, perhaps reminders, it's ideas of what I might be able to do or where I might be able to flex and change, and that there's no expectation of perfection. Okay. And as always, kind of feel free to reach out to me. I will share my contact details at the end of this presentation, and I'm happy to talk to people a little bit more if that's helpful. So, as you're thinking about these habits and kind of I just asked you to consider what habits you would like to be doing. Connect those back to kind of your core values. Because again, I don't want people to walk away from this feeling like I'm not enough or there's so much I can do. Think about some of those core values that you have. Is it that you really value um, in your family kindness or loyalty? Um, is it that you really right now are almost in more of a survival mode? And many of us are, where you're really worried about finances or how you're going to keep the lights on, right? They're not necessarily have to be competing values. we might focus on some of those values more at different times. I might need to focus more on my financial contribution to the household right now. And as some of those burdens ease or things shift in our financial situation, I might have more freedom to be creative or do some more adventuring. So there are seasons in life, and that's true for most of us. So think about what you value and kind of not only what you value now, but where you would like to grow. Okay. So I'm going to share with you kind of my top four um, habits that I'd love to see if I were to have a magic wand and wish this upon not only my own family, which my kids are out of the house now, but if I could wish this upon the families that I work with are families that I see. Now, this list might be different tomorrow. Was seeking input from others, including my daughter today, about like, hey, what are some of the habits you would like to see in a family? I love the fresh perspective of young people. But of course, I did my research, and looked at, what are some of the studies showing us? And being in this field for so long, I definitely see some themes, especially post COVID, but themes that we're all living with right now. So I want to talk about these briefly and just going to name them with a brief explanation. And then we'll go into them each a little bit more. I'm just going to make sure that I'm doing on time. And then these are the four that I want to make sure to cover tonight. And then I'll probably spend the last 5 or 10 minutes this evening of just throwing out kind of rapid fire some other pieces that are important. But again, not an exhaustive list, far, far from it, and not even exhaustive of what I value or what I would put out there. But again, this is kind of projecting what I would see more from my practice and what I would love to, if I could have that magic wand to see for families. So, then one of the number one things I would say is quality, ideally child-directed play, but time together. Um, I do parent-child interaction therapy, and the foundation of that, and what we talked about last week, is around child-directed play, where our kids get 5 minutes of special time with their parent or parents or caregivers. And during that special time, not only is the child picking what they play, but they are directing that. The parents are doing a lot of labeled praise. They are doing a lot of reflection, a lot of behavior descriptions. And if there's any kinds of challenging behaviors, they're using their opportunity to ignore those and praise right away once those behaviors shift and change around. That 5 minutes of special time and play every day from, PCIT looks primarily at ages 2 to 7, but this can go from birth on, right? Like our little newborns aren't playing in that way. But when we can dedicate that time to our kids, we're not only building their skills of language or reinforcing the behaviors we want to see in them, but we're building trust and connection with them that will go so far. It is the foundation of having healthy and successful relationships with our children and within our children outside of the family unit or outside of home. Part of what that's doing is also allowing for our kids then outside of that special time, they're going to have a different relationship with us. We're going to have stronger communication skills with them. They are much more likely to be able to listen to us when we do have to offer commands, which in this kind of parenting style will be less frequently and less often. And when we do have to issue a command, they're much more likely to listen and respond to that. So whether it's in a more urgent, like stop, don't run across the road, or something like, in our household, we play ball outside, not inside, right? Those kinds of commands will be much more likely to be heard. So many benefits. I can't say enough about quality time together. But even more specifically is that child-directed special time play, even for 5 minutes a day. That's not the only way we engage with our kids. That's not the only way we're attentive and involved. That's not the only way that we play. We still want to do all of those things. But if I were to say magic wand, bam, quality time is where it's at. The second thing I would name is screens, less of them, period. I think there's a real social movement right now from a lot of people and seeing even younger generations seeing the detriment that screens have. And there's still a huge social phenomenon of children, very young children, looking at screens. And I'll share with you some of those statistics as we go forward today. But screen time, I would take it down, out, whatever that looks like. As I mentioned, screens out of the bedrooms. That's a great strategy. Not before bed. That's another strategy. Um, Limit how often they have it. There are some value in screens, like using screens as a tool, like for maps or learning a language, using screens to talk and communicate, like FaceTime or texting. But the middle stuff of like using screens like a treat, like gaming, social media, some of those really need to be re-examined. Screens aren't just universally bad, but for the most part, we really need to be mindful of not only the content that screens can bring into our children's lives and how that can be negative, but also when screens are in, what are they displacing? Right? When you're using screens more, they're displacing something else. And we see a ton of research about how the more time children are on screen, there's a lot of developmental tasks that aren't being met, including the desire and the capacity to have face-to-face social interactions. Direct correlation, increased screen time, decreased desire and skills having real face-to-face interactions. So something to be thinking about. My magic one continues, and I'd say clear and consistent boundaries is my next one. And we'll talk again about this in a little bit greater detail. Um, but children need boundaries. Younger children need probably more limits in what they're allowed to do for safety, cognitive development. But we as parents need to expand those boundaries as our children age. I just was speaking with one of my patients about kind of that natural conflict that happens as we have young adults, teenagers, and young adults with parents. And I always felt like this as a parent, and I can see it in other parents as well, is just when I think I kind of am figuring out what my kid might need right now from me, they outgrow that, right? They are constantly outgrowing those boundaries. And so, as an adult, knowing what those clear and consistent boundaries are and doing the work to re examine those, that as they age, we can communicate and change those to allow them to have natural consequences, to trust them to figure things out on their own, to let them go through challenges and negotiate how to fix and solve those difficulties, and to let them be more resilient. And the reason we want those boundaries as well is so that they have a sense of safety. Like I stay within these boundaries and I know I'm safe in here. I know that I can take calculated risks when I have these safe boundaries. And that as they age and grow, move out of the home, when they have those boundaries, then they are safer and able to better navigate the world around them because they can create boundaries for themselves or with other people. They can make those requests and figure out what their values are and what that looks like, their kind of what their risk tolerance level is and their stimuli level is and what they want to be engaged in. And this fourth one perhaps should be listed first. But all of this, as we talked about last week, is really only going to work when our parents engage in self-care. Period. Right? Parents often think of self-care as selfish, and I would actually encourage you to flip it and think about it the other way. It's selfless. The more that you can engage in that self-care, it allows you to have something to give to your kids. And this is really the topic of our third session for next week. So we'll talk more about that then, but I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so healthy habits, top four that I am hoping to expand on, and I just introduced healthy relationships and we talked about quality time specifically, limiting screen times, but what are the kind of the power of screens? Creating structure and having boundaries, and parent self-care. I also want to name in passing, again, not to say, here's a list of all the things that we need to be doing better, but some other ones that really stand out and matter. Not exhaustive, but how do we keep our kids and each other safe? Creating sleep routines that are helpful, another really important habit. Moving our body and getting outside. Creating nourishing traditions around nutrition and habits, and getting creative. And I think of that includes things like regular reading and other ways that we're doing some of that intellectual well-being. So fostering healthy relationships. This is kind of what I talked about already around being offering attention, being involved in our kids' lives, playing with them, ideally child-directed play, special time each day. But fostering these healthy relationships, of course, is an important habit in our family units to be having. Teaching our children how to communicate, how to listen, not interrupt, how to express what they're feeling without having those big emotions all the time of anger or yelling. What does that look like? Limiting screens, or in this case, limiting the power of screens. I talked already a little bit about how screens aren't all bad. There can be tools and ways that they help us communicate, but oftentimes they're used for what should be considered more like a treat, gaming, social media, etc. But when we're on screens, there's two kinds of things that can be harmful, especially for our children. The content itself, but also what is that screen displacing? What is it when you're using a screen? What aren't you doing, or what aren't you learning? And we call that an experience blocker, right? It's blocking us from having an experience with a real person, or out in the wilderness, or reading a book, or doing many of the other things that we would have done otherwise. Screens are created to have what's called persuasive technology. And what this persuasive technology does, and you've probably heard about this, if not in the news, but in other parenting media or research, is that it's trying to increase our dopamine levels, right? It kind of hooks us in. And the dopamine levels that screens, and especially different things like social media, can do is more dopamine than we would get from having sex. It's closer to the dopamine levels we might experience dumped into our brain if we were to do something like cocaine. So, pretty powerful stuff screens can be. And we parents engage in screens. We are not the best role models. We're kind of experiencing this as our kids do. So, we're oftentimes they say, and I would say younger parents, probably not so much, but older parents our kind of this is our second language technology. So we're trying to figure out how this works within our life, and perhaps again, not the best role models. Younger parents, if they've grown up with technology more, we call that like a native speaker. That's just part of their language, part of their dialect, part of who they are, how they communicate, or a tool they use in the world. And so native speakers might have a different relationship with technology or screens in particular. Um, Either way, these are important things to be challenging. So when we look at screen usage in children, these are some of the things that can be decreased by screens, even if that's just having the TV on in the background, right? If it's just white noise or keeping me company, can be problematic. So when we have screens going, or when they're accessing screens, given even if it's in the background, it decreases our kids' capacity to have emotional regulation, their cognitive development, their capacity to pay attention, their capacity to form relationships, language capacity, engagement capacity. And we know that kids are much more likely to act out when parents are using screens. And I'm not sure if I could say daily, but definitely multiple times a week. This is one of the things that I hear from parents. My kids won't listen to me, or they're acting out. And when we talk about some habits around screen usage, it's oftentimes when their parents are using a device, or when the kids have been using screens and they're being told to come off of those screens. So there is very real outcomes that come from screen usage and especially screen overusage. And a lot of this information I'm sharing with you about screen time in particular was created by an organization in Portland called Mindful Media. And I share Ariana and Megan's email addresses here. What Ariana is with New Leaf Speech Therapy, and so talks a lot about kind of the language connection, and Megan Orton is with Mindful Media. So feel free to reach out to them for more information. But these next few slides are definitely directly from them. So I want to make sure that they're referenced. But this, as we're looking at kind of screen recommendations, I think this can be helpful. We know that kiddos, the young age 2 and under, no more than an hour, but less is preferred, right? So Oregon Quality Rating Improvement System says for kids 2 and under should have no screen time at all. And I can't tell you how many times I see in doctor's offices when I've worked in primary care or when I'm out in the world traveling, how many kids I've seen, even like who can hardly hold their own head up. They're like laying in a bassinet at the airport looking at an iPad, right? As a way to keep them, I don't even know what, engaged, entertained. So again, I sound like I've got my judgy voice on a little bit here, and that's not necessarily my intention, but my intention is to say, like, this is something that we as a culture and we as parents really need to be challenging. There's some in important developmental changes that happen when we enter screens into our children's lives too early. For school-aged kiddos, so kind of that 2 to 5-year-old, you can see that there's some different ranges here, but still 2 to 5, 1 hour of co-viewing a day so that we're monitoring that content, or half an hour per week, and it's related to educational physical activity program. And the World Health Organization says no more than 1 hour and less is preferred. And I just challenge you all to think about that. You know, if we're saying at the absolute maximum it is an hour a day, how are we doing with that marker? Um, and how many families are in a social position that they're using screens as a form of childcare? And let's not just point the finger at parents like bad individuals. What are the systems that exist that make it feel like this is what we need to do to raise our kids? That parents are so stressed or financially, or time wise, or they don't feel like they have the mental emotional capacity to have alternatives for their children, that screens become a real option. So again, this isn't just a pointing the finger at kids. What's going on in the larger context that's creating this as kind of a normative behavior, and how can we change that? Because again, we do know that that habit is problematic for the development of our kids. Last group here is the recommendations for our older kids, 5 to 18. And you can see less than 2 hours for entertainment based is recommended. And if we're going to do that, it's in some countries, they're banning social media for children under age 16. But in general, social media is intended to be limited to no more than 30 minutes a day. So, how do we teach our kids if this is a tool that we can use for communication or for other things like maps and learning the language and photography? How do we help them learn about how to use this tool appropriately and how to stay safe, right? So for school age versus teenagers, some skills that we can think about when we talk about screens displacing other behaviors, these are some of the behaviors that screens can displace so that we would, what we as parents want to try to protect, right? Don't let these things get too displaced. And for us as the parents, kind of the role models here, whether we are native to technology and it's our first language, or whether this is our second language, think about how we are behaving with our screens and try to create a healthy culture of screen usage in our own household. avoid being on your screen all the time. Even if you work from home and their children are home, think about how you could do that if you take breaks. And alternatively, like if you're home and you might need to check, even though you're home and you're not necessarily working, but if you need to check in on your phone or use it to make appointments or that sort of thing, um, Megan and Adriana recommend doing like 55 minutes of concentrated time, attention, and not using your device. And then 5 minutes of check those texts, check those phone calls, make the calls you need to make, take the notes or check your emails, and then set it down again, right? Trying to create some expectations of what screen usage might look like. And talk about it with your kids. Talk about the struggles or the challenges that you're having so that they can understand and help either come up with processes that they enjoy or want to implement themselves or what that could look like. Okay. I'm mindful of our time, so I'm going to keep going. I want to get through, like I said, kind of these top four of quality time, screens, boundaries, and parent self-care. And then I'm going to fire off a few other ones that are in different categories, also important, but just for the sake of time. So, creating structure and boundaries, I think, is another habit. The more that we can kind of automate this so that there's not a constant like micromanaging mental load being carried by a parent or nagging and pushback, right? How do we create family expectations, family rules, chores? One of the strongest predictors of successful outcomes in adulthood is if a child has had to do chores. Speaks a lot. And I think from my perspective as a therapist and a parent, I think there's something about chores that can almost not only attend to the natural flow of life, but it also acts as a bit of a buffer. It's skills that they're going to need and that they can develop. It helps them appreciate other people around them. Obviously, being able to do things that will be helpful for careers. But I also think about kind of our American culture of go, 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 do more, do more, do more. But when they have chores at home, it can create this little bit of a buffer, right? They can only do so many sports and so many activities and concentrate so much on school. If they have those chores, it's almost like this mindfulness kind of calm time at home. And if things get super stressful, yeah, maybe they don't do their own laundry this week. It might get smelly, but yeah, no laundry, that's okay. But having that buffer gives them somewhere to flex when pressures like finals week come or things get overwhelming. And just like us adults, we might do the same thing. Like when we are slammed at work, we might not get the dishes done. Okay, they're not done. And that space is an important space for us to have as far as time management goes. So trying to have expectations in the summer months, especially when kids are home, this can be a great strategy is like, hey, these 5 things need to be done before you ask me for your screen or to go out or to do something, right? Did you, whatever, um, make your bed, read for at least 30 minutes, go outside, move your body for 30 minutes, and do your family chore, get the dishes done, right? Once those are all done, then come to me and ask if you want a privilege. But I don't want to hear about going to so and so's house or whatever, whatever, until those things are done, right? What are those family expectations? And maybe that's just Monday through Friday. That's fine. But it sets clear expectations and reduces that kind of I'm having to ask for these things to be done and kids pushing. Be consistent, right? Yes, we talked about boundaries might need to shift and change as our children's needs shift and change. But if they one day really, really, really want to get on their device with their friends are on right now, but they haven't done their chores. And you're like, oh, okay. And then next tomorrow, they really, 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 and you're like, no. It's hard for kids when those boundaries are constantly changing to actually know how to engage in the environment around them. So think of that elephant and the rider and the environment. When we can create a consistent path forward, then that is going to serve that cognitive thinking and emotional elephant much better It will help them regulate, like, oh, okay, this is how it's going to be today, and it's also going to be this way tomorrow. And I know what to expect. And then parent self-care. We already kind of talked about this as an extreme. Sometimes it might feel selfish, but really being able to take care of ourselves because that parent-child relationship is so interconnected. When we get our own needs met, it's much easier for us to meet the needs of our child. So again, big topic for next week. All right, here goes the power through of some additional habits. Safety is always important. Um, Little and big things. Teaching our kids the correct name for body parts, not forcing our kids to touch people if they don't want to, right? I am not forcing you to kiss that relative goodbye or give them a hug. Um, I'm talking about their value more than their physical appearance. I'm asking them consistently and regularly if anyone's ever asked them to keep a secret or touched them in a way that made them feel uncomfortable, right? I'm advocating for my kiddo. I'm helping them trust their instincts. These kinds of things are well beyond just what I can do while they're a child, but helping them think about being able to communicate and trust their own and get their own bodily needs met. And when something doesn't feel right for them, that is a real life skill that I want to give to my kids. Creating sleep routines. I see this a lot as a direct relationship to screens, but having a regular sleep, especially on weekdays. But if you have a chance to read more about circadian rhythms, if we change a lot about our sleep rhythms from weekdays to weekends, it can actually make it really difficult to have consistency. So especially for kids who are having difficulty sleeping, try to keep that sleep time and wake time consistent. Have a routine before bed. Do the same things each night so that your kiddo's body starts to associate that with time to relax and have it be calming things, right? I turn down the lights as the evening goes on. The relaxing bedtime routines aren't wrestling, they're taking a bath and reading a book. When I think about screens, again, not only keeping them out of the bedroom, I not having TVs in there, but older kids who have their own devices, they're being charged either in a parent room if they need to be overseen or in a common area, so that they're not something that they're reaching or using. It is recommended that everybody is off devices 2 hours prior to bedtime so that those blue lights and that stimuli is not impacting our brain and our capacity to sleep, but at least an hour for our kids of from screens off to when I want them to be able to fall asleep. That sleep environment ideally is cool and dark, but if the kids would prefer some, ambient light, that's okay. But you want to create a calm, relaxed environment. Kids have it pretty hard, and sometimes parents too, but kids' bedrooms almost have like their whole house in there. They're kind of like an adult's garage. They might be in their bedrooms to play, to do schoolwork, to try to sleep. So we want to try as much as possible to protect the bed, to be where they sleep, right? If you can get them space to do homework or a little desk or playing, that can help their bodies associate like, this is where I relax, this is where I go to sleep. And as they're laying down to go to sleep, if they have a difficult time falling asleep, try a couple of things. Yes, counting sheep isn't that far off, but one thing that I like to do to help kids fall asleep and is think about kind of a neutral word like um, football or uh, stairs, and have them, if they're able to spell that word stairs, but start with the letter S, and they're going to use that to spell a neutral word that starts with S. So it might be steeple, Steeple, and then the T. Um, uh, I don't know. I'm kind of touchdown, Touchdown. As they start to do that, that allows their brain to think about something else other than what they're ruminating on. This works for adults too. And it can help your brain relax. And very rarely have I heard this. Now it's far from, I don't work with a lot of people who have more complex sleep difficulties, but it can be a great way to help them fall asleep. If you're laying in bed for more than 15 or 20 minutes and you can't fall asleep, it's time to get out of bed. Don't go do something super stimulating. Maybe just get up and go to the bathroom, keep the lights dim or not on at all. Get a sip of water, even grab a book and read it, and sit outside of your bed. Give yourself a few minutes outside of the bed because, again, the bed is for sleeping. And if you're not falling asleep, we want to remove ourselves from that, do something else for a few minutes, and then come back in and try again. Okay. For adults, we want to model good sleep hygiene. Okay. Don't sit in your, stay up really late watching TV. I'm guilty of that sometimes. I really like closure. So television and television series aren't great for me. But think about like what works and what doesn't. What are your sleep patterns? Get outside and move, right? Move our bodies. Kids need 60 minutes of physical activity. They need to be outside. Screens not only it displaces physical activity and outside time, but it can also, lack of physical activity can be linked to lower self-esteem, lower body image, increased risk for obesity. So try to get outside and get moving. Nutrition. This can be, as many specialists in this field know, complicated. But we want to create food culture around nourishing food that nourishes kind of social relationships and bonding as well. So when you can, eat together. Try to eat whole foods. Um, yes, protein is important, especially for kids. If we have kids that are eating beautiful, wonderful whole fruits and vegetables that are full of fiber, sometimes their little tummies can get full before they get enough calories. So, what might work really well for your adult body may not necessarily work great for your kid. So, just be mindful of that nutrition. And if you need support, your pediatrician or a nutritionist might be a great resource to think about. But again, healthy relationships with food involve community and nourishing kind of whole foods. And then my last kind of throw it out there, not less important, but um, is around being creative, getting them to engage and use their minds in ways like regular reading together. I love and recommend audiobooks, in the car as family time. You can pick up where you left off, and it gives you all an opportunity to share stories and laughter when you might be doing otherwise, I don't know, kids might be on their phone. Um, Role play imaginative games, make up stories, draw, write, do art. The neural pathways that can be created and fostered from creativity is something that can help with brain development, language, cognition, social relationships, right? Even something new. And this doesn't necessarily mean expensive or travel, which I love travel, but think about things like even a new experience, going to a new park, meeting a new person, reading a new kind of book, trying to think about the resources that you have. I always love to go be in the presence of books, like go to a library or a bookstore. I know our Deschutes County Library, where I'm actually presenting tomorrow night, um, they do amazing events. So a lot of them are free. They have a lot going on the holidays, like the train guy is coming back again. I really recommend checking those out. Having story time for our young kids can be a great chance for parents to be in community with each other. Okay, so habits. What matters to you, right? Where are your family values and which things do you want to focus on that's going to matter the most? For me, as a therapist and provider, I look at things that are creating some of those challenging behaviors. And the ones that I kind of named before, I think are the low-hanging fruit, right? Trying to spend quality time with our kids, reducing those screens without a doubt. trying to have clear and consistent boundaries, and taking care of yourself as a parent. Those four things to me really can make a big difference in some of these challenging behaviors, but they're not the only things, and they might not be your thing. Okay. Feel free to reach out with any questions or comments. As I said, this is the second part of this workshop, and we have one more focusing around nourishing the parent, and that's going to be next week. Um, I am presenting tomorrow night at the Deschutes County Library around alternatives to screens using reading and writing primarily, but kind of that creativity. Tomorrow's focus is going to be around preschool and school-aged kids. And then in January, I'm doing the same. Tomorrow's Downtown Bend. January, I'll be doing a presentation in Sisters. That's more towards tween and teenagers and kind of some of those same strategies. And then in line with this, a third upcoming event series that I want to share is doing a parenting book club. And this is not about parents having to read the book, though you're welcome to either before or after, but we're going to use it as a foundation to have discussions around some of the key concepts of those books. So the first one in February will be The Whole Brain Child. In May, we're going to do the anxious generation. We actually mentioned Jonathan Haidt earlier in the happiness hypothesis and the elephant rider and path. He's the same author. August 10th is going to be how to talk so your kids will listen and how to listen so your kids will talk. And then the November book was To Be Determined, likely kind of connected to our community around the Sisters Festival of Books. And this event is taking place in the local bookstore, Paulina Springs Bookstore and Sisters. Thank you all. Thanks for your time, for watching. And this is how to reach me if you're interested or have any follow-up questions or comments. And I appreciate watching. And I look forward to our third and final part next week. Take care, everybody.